Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. Obviously, one of the ever-evolving things here in Warzone is the meta, the most effective tactics available. And specifically, we look at guns for that, right? Like, obviously, we have meta perks, meta equipment, the heartbeat sensor, ghost, whatever it may be. But the weapons are the core focus of how actual gameplay functions and what you want to be using every single day to have the best possible games, right? To win the most, to get the most kills, all sorts of stuff like that. And we've seen a lot of changes to it over the course of time. Recently, though, the meta changes have been drawn back a bit because it would sort of make sense. We've had the Cold War weapons available for a long time now. They've finally gone through and really tuned out a lot of those and really fine-tuned them to a way where they're all pretty much well-balanced. Obviously, Modern Warfare weapons have been here the longest. They're all pretty much well-balanced. But we are approaching a new major meta update when the Vanguard integration happens, and we see, 40 plus new weapons added to the game. They're going to need balancing that are going to have a massive impact on the meta, and in between now and then, we're probably going to see some slight changes here and there. But today, I wanted to take a broader look at the next meta update and what is likely going to happen in the coming weeks, then also once the Vanguard integration takes place. So as we go through it all, if you enjoy the video at any point, let me know by dropping a like on it. Would be seriously appreciated. And of course, if you're new here or if you haven't subscribed yet, this is the place to be for everything going on in COD, news, intel, updates, loadouts, tips. It is all right here every single day. So feel free to subscribe with your notifications turned on. The main thing I want to focus on with our tier list, which obviously we've looked at pretty much every time there's a major meta update, is how exactly this meta feels right now. And there's a reason that as of lately, we haven't seen all that many major meta changes. Like, there was a time where it seems like every week, every 10 days, we were seeing massive weapon tuning changes go live and massive weapon tuning balance passes go live. Lately, though, it's just like small things here and there, some attachment tweaking, some minor changes to certain very specific weapons. And that's primarily because anything from top meta to the bottom of viable here is usable right now. Below average, there's some guns that really just don't really have like a big impact on the Warzone meta. You could say niche is also usable, but in specific situations, primarily like solos and whatnot, garbage you don't want to be using. But anything inviable here, solid. You could get away with actually using it, and you can get kills with it depending on your skill level and the obviously the skill level of your enemies as well. Competitive, absolutely usable. I'd recommend any of these weapons on any given loadout. And obviously the top meta, while there's not much, these are the best of the best. Like, there's a lot of weapons in Warzone right now that you can get away with using because it is very well balanced. You look at this list, 6 months ago, and it was all Cold War weapons in top meta, very few things in viable, mostly things in below average, right? Like, there were a lot of imbalances at that point in time. But now, though, we have a very balanced meta, which is why in the coming weeks in between now and, the Vanguard integration, I'm sure we're going to see some occasional Warzone updates. Like, obviously, we're still going to have the weekly playlist updates and everything. But as far as major tuning updates go, I wouldn't expect there to be a ton. We'll talk more on what could potentially be changing here in a moment. But just because this is so balanced out right now and so competitive throughout top meta and viable, and there's so many different weapons you could potentially use, that's why we don't see a ton of weapon tuning happening right at this instant. Now, that said, I do think, as mentioned, there could be some changes in the coming weeks that, prior to the Vanguard integration happening, just because there are some weapons that are, borderline overpowered, a little bit pressing when it comes to trying to get this slower overall TTK that Raven wants. Things like the AK-47, it's the second most used gun in the game right now behind the Kar98K. It's not really moving up or down in terms of pick ratio here on Warzone Ranked, but it's clear as day the second most used weapon in the game because it has an insane TTK and it's very easy to use. It's one of the better rifle TTKs for that matter. So in all reality, in the coming weeks, for the soonest next meta update, I don't think we could see many TTK changes, but the AK is a weapon that I could potentially see being nerfed there. Same deal with the MG82. While it's the 20th picked weapon, its TTK is absolutely, not helping with that lower overall average and slower overall average, I should say, because its TTK over range is also absolutely absurd. So like MG82, AK-47, and maybe even the EM2, since that's another top 10 weapon here, which is actually increasing in pick rates. Those are weapons that have outliers in terms of faster TTKs, which is not helping raise the overall average there. So those could be things that we see change. But outside of that, this is one of the most balanced pick rates that we've seen in quite some time. The coefficient here is sitting about 0.75, which is relatively good. It's not the lowest we've ever seen at like 0.71 or, 0.70 here, but it's pretty solid. Like, there's a really, really good balance in this overall meta right now. So in the coming weeks, I wouldn't expect many changes, but Vanguard integration time, I think there's going to be a lot of changes. So now we're over here on True Game Data. The site and Tony's YouTube channel will be linked down in the description below. And something I want to look at is the STG and the M1 Grand, two Vanguard weapons that we already have, versus some of the top meta weapons that have insane TTKs like the AK the EM2 and the MG82. Because, as we know, it's very clear and very obvious, Cold War weapons are the favorites in Warzone. They want to push Cold War weapons to be better so that players inadvertently go and play Cold War and focus more on that game. It's a way to push sales and benefit the premium title. The same thing's going to happen with Vanguard. I could almost guarantee it, right? Because Vanguard's going to launch. We're going to have all these new weapons, and they want players to play Vanguard and want eyes on Vanguard, so they're going to make the Vanguard weapons very good. We saw Modern Warfare weapons get phased out when Cold War launched. We have very few competitive Modern Warfare weapons now. Cold War weapons, I've been receiving nerfs for a while now. And I would assume that as Vanguard weapons come to the game, we're going to see even more nerfs to make Cold War weapons less viable and less competitive, and really make the Vanguard weapons stand out. And they're already sort of doing that, because we've seen nerfs to many different weapons, even the AK and the MG82 over time, to make them slightly less effective. When we go ahead and look at this now to the chest shots here, pink line's going to be the M1 Grand. It's actually pretty competitive through about 20 meters. Over range, it's not super ideal. But the STG literally has the exact same stat line as the Cold War AK. Now imagine the Vanguard integration happens, the Cold War AK gets nerfed, and what is the new go-to rifle? The STG. They're promoting Vanguard. The MG82 is still good. Over range, it's going to be the best. The Cold War AK and the STG, though, are incredible over range, just ever so slightly behind the EM2 here. Let's go ahead. Let's look at headshots. Cold War AK, STG, neck and neck, exact same stat line as mentioned. The MG82, not really all that good. EM2, not really all that good. M1 Grand, absolutely insane. No damage drop off. Through and through is incredible if you're able to hit headshots with this thing. Let's go ahead. Let's look at the neck shots. M1 Grand, really nothing too crazy, but STG, just like the Cold War AK, utterly phenomenal. And you'll guess it again, it's the exact same stat line, it's the exact same drop-off pattern. To the stomach, M1 Grand, very competitive through 20. Very similar to like the DMR-esque in a lot of ways. It's really good for like close range right now. STG right there is one of the best, I guess tied for second best through about 26 meters. Then it drops off to become one of the more competitive ones over range. And same deal to the extremities as well. It's going to be the best up through 26 meters, and then it drops off. Whereas the M1 Grand is still really good through 20 meters. So the two Vanguard weapons that we already have right now really do hold their own against the absolute best weapons that we have available from Cold War. And those aren't even fully customized. Those are just base weapons. We have the blueprints, right, which really aren't the most ideal setups even. Once we can go through and really optimize the muzzle and the barrel with all the 10 attachments, like, these weapons are going to be utterly insane. So when it comes to the next meta updates, really what I'm expecting is for Modern Warfare weapons and Cold War weapons to continue to be balanced out to the point where they're just, you know, mid-tier. They're viable, but they're definitely not the absolute top meta choice. And Vanguard weapons are really going to shine. It's sort of a predictable thing. It definitely is a business strategy here, but it's also going to be like just the way of Warzone. And I think it's going to continue to happen as we see Modern Warfare 2022 introduced and other games beyond that, so long as Warzone is still active and alive. This is sort of the wave. So in terms of close range meta updates, if anything, we might see some nerfs to some of these better TTK weapons, the AK, the EM2, and the MG82. Outside of that, I'd be very surprised to see any other weapons severely nerfed. And then long-term next meta update, when it comes to the Vanguard integration, probably towards the start of December, Vanguard weapons are going to be taking over, it seems, just based off the early stats that we have already. So I wanted to sort of break that down and sort of preview what's sort of coming in the next few weeks and up to like the next month and a half or so. Should be an interesting time though. It should be very fun to see what weapons really shine in the coming weeks and months. And as always, we're gonna be covering that all right here on the channel. So if you're not already subscribed, feel free to do so. Click that sub button, tap that bell icon. That way you can always guarantee you're up to date with the latest loadouts, news, intel updates, and everything else going on in COD. And of course, if you guys enjoyed this video, let me know by dropping a like on it. Seriously does help the channel grow. Well, once again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. And until next time, take it easy. Have an awesome rest of your day. And I will catch you guys later. Peace out.